Check one, two, three. Testing one, two, three.
Testing in room or online?
Loud and clear, thank you. Testing audio check 1, 2, 3.
We're going to call to order. As we begin today's meeting, we would like to acknowledge that we are gathering here today on the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and before them, the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Huron, and Wendat. We also acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and other global Indigenous people that now call Brampton their home. We are honored to live, work, and enjoy this land. Please all rise for the singing of our national anthem, to be followed by a moment of personal reflection.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for stand on guard for thee.
All right, you may be seated. Welcome to our regular council meeting of October 16th, 2024. All other members are present at today's meeting in person or remotely, except for, and we'll have the clerk clarify if anybody is absent.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Mayor Brown has sent his regrets. Yep. Everybody else is here in person today.
Perfect. We are now at item 2, approval of the agenda. I will pass it to the clerk to share some revisions.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, the revised agenda was published Tuesday at approximately 3:15 p.m. The following items were included in the revised agenda. 4.2, the minutes for the special meeting of October 9th were published. 6.2b, proclamation for National Respiratory Therapy Week was published. And 8.1, staff report, government relations matters, the presentation was published. 10.2.1, staff report, suspension and revocation of short-term rental licenses. The report was published. 10.4.3, staff report regarding city comments on ERO 19-9210, amendment to Ontario Regulation 299-19. The report was published and the title was updated. 18.10, bylaw 163-2024 was published. And that's it for the revisions.
Okay, thank you. Do any members have anything they wish to add? Fantastic. I don't see anything. So we have a motion moved by Councillor Brar and seconded by Councillor Pleshy to approve the agenda. All in favor? Motion carries. We are now at item 3, declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Does any member have a declaration of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act for any member for any matter to be considered on today's agenda? Okay, I don't see any, so that will be noted. Adoption of minutes. We are now ready to move to the next item of business on today's council agenda, item 4, minutes. We have the following council minutes before us today. 4.1, minutes City Council September 25th, 2024. 4.2, minutes City Council Special Meeting October 9th, 2024. Do any members have any questions? Hearing and seeing none, I have a motion moved by Councillor Keenan and seconded by Councillor Maderos to approve the minutes as published and circulated. All in favor? Motion carries. Moving on to the consent motion. As part of our consent motion process, I will read each agenda item that is subject to the consent motion, and any member may verbally identify the item to be held for debate during the meeting. Any item not held for debate will be considered as part of the consent motion and voted on for approval. I'll start reading the relevant agenda items, and members can identify any item to be held for debate. 8.1, Government Relations Matters. Consent. Report regarding suspension and revocation of short-term rental licenses. Hold. My sheet does not have, 10.2.1. And who held that? Okay, Paul Vicente. Okay, 10.4.1, staff report regarding request for relief of fees and charges associated with the construction of the new St. Patrick's Church. That is in consent. 10.4.2 will be held for a verbal update. 10.4.3 will be held by Councillor Santos. 12.1 minutes planning and development committee meeting, September 9th, 2024 to be received. Okay, that is in consent. 11.1 staff report regarding purchasing card audit 2024 issues and recommendations. Okay, that is in consent. 12.1 minutes planning and development committee, September 23rd, 2024. That is in consent. 12.2 minutes committee of council, October 2nd, 2024 to be approved. That is in consent. 12.3 minutes audit committee, October 7th, 2024 to be approved. That is in consent. 16.1 referred matters list, consent. 19.1 closed session minutes, city council, September 25th, 2024, consent. 19.2 closed session minutes, committee of council, October 2nd, 2024, that is in consent. 19.3 closed session minutes, audit committee, October 7th, 2024, that is in consent. Report purchasing card audit supplementation information held by Councillor Keenan. 19.5 held by Councillor Santos. And that is the consent agenda. So if I may summarize the holds, we have 10.2.1, which is held by Councillor Vicente. We have 10.4.2, which I held for a verbal update. We have 10.4.3 held by Councillor Santos. We have 19.4 report held by Councillor Keenan, and 19.5 report held by Councillor Santos. Does that match your notes? Yes. All right, perfect. I have a motion moved by Councillor Tour and seconded by Councillor Power to approve the consent motion. All in favor? Motion carries. We have 3 announcements and 2 proclamations today. Each announcement will be permitted 2 minutes. Our first announcement is sponsored by Councillor Santos for Dress Purple Day. I will ask Mary Beth to come forward. And perhaps you can help me pronounce your last name.
Absolutely, it's Molenkamp.
Molenkamp. You have 2 minutes.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting us here today. Every October, Children's Aid Societies across the province have the opportunity to talk about the Dress Purple Day campaign. And each year we talk about vulnerable children and youth and the role that communities play in keeping them safe in our communities. And October 25th is Dress Purple Day, and we invite everybody to dress purple on that day. I did also just want to share some of the things that we're seeing in the community. You know, PL Children's Aid supports almost 8,000 families per year. We have almost 11,000 referrals. 50% of those come from Brampton. Post-pandemic, we're seeing issues related to intimate partner violence, youth mental health, and even human trafficking. And we're very excited to talk about a new youth wellness hub that is coming to Brampton. We have been tasked by the provincial government to open one in Brampton in 2025. I really want to honor and thank Councillor Santos for her work in this. We have been in discussions with the city to be talking about how we merge those 2 pieces together. And with that, I'm just going to turn it quickly over to our Chair of the Board, Carol Kantaka, to talk about our new strategic plan.
Thank you all for taking the time to allow us to be here today. As all of you know better than anyone, we're living in a time of significant change. We're seeing transformation is driving out at a rapid pace. It's unprecedented, and it's not going to get any slower. So at Peel Children's Aid, we've been engaging in a journey of transformation over the last 3 years. Through extensive consultation with our children, our youth, families, employees, community members, our partners, and critical stakeholders, we wanted to have a continued dialogue to think about who do we want to be collectively. What is the vision that we seek to achieve together? And so we now have a new strategic plan, which we will be launching, and the vision is that we want to ensure that children and youth are safe, empowered, and thriving. They're set. Our vision is, and our mission is to champion the safety and well-being of our children and youth based on their unique needs while strengthening families. Our values are focused on collaboration, accountability, respect, equity, and support. These are our critical components. Our strategic goals will be addressing overrepresentation for Black, Indigenous, and other equity-deserving groups, and specifically as they pertain to children and youth. Innovation will be critical, driving it at the service delivery level from a frontline perspective, but also at the systems level to drive improved, consistent outcomes over the long term. We seek to advocate. We need to champion the needs of our children and youth and engage those in joining us in that advocacy to ensure that no child or youth is left behind. Inclusivity will be a critical component in everything that we do. It continues to be a critical component in everything we do. And sustainability. From a resource perspective, it'll include things like revenue diversification and traditional and non-traditional partnerships. As Beth mentioned, October 25th, we're going to be launching our new strategic plan on Dress Purple Day, and all of you will have received an invitation. We sincerely hope to see you all there. Over to you, Beth.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you for this opportunity today and really thank you for your commitment to vulnerable children and youth in our communities. Councillor Santos, you've been a champion for youth. We appreciate that. Our youth appreciate that. And our role is really to be here for vulnerable children and youth whenever and however they need it. And upstream approaches is what we are looking to do. So thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Santos, you can stay there. I think she has some comments to make as well.
Thanks so much through you, Mr. Chair. Long time no see. I was just at the CAS building yesterday talking about the Youth Wellness Hub and Dress Purple Day, and was lucky enough to get a tour of your new Trailblazers
Youth Center.
Trailblazers Youth Center, which was fantastic. And I just want to say thank you for all of your work in supporting, protecting, and being there for all of our young people, especially those in need. And it's been fantastic to work together with you to do more about our Youth Wellness Hub here in Brampton. So thanks for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving on, we have Turkish Republic Day, and I'll read out the proclamation. Whereas October 29th, 2024 celebrates the Republic Day of Turkey. This year commemorates 101 years of the Declaration of the Republic in 1923 by Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, the esteemed founder of the Turkish Republic. Whereas Canadians of Turkish descent have played a significant role in the educational, cultural, economic, and civic development of our community through sharing their rich cultural heritage and through their dedication to the responsibilities of good citizenship. Whereas on this day, we celebrate the rich heritage of the Turkish-Canadian community, which contributes to the diversity and cultural mosaic of Canadian society. Therefore, I, Mayor Patrick Brown, on behalf of Brampton City Council, do hereby proclaim October 29th, 2024 as Turkish Republic Day in the city of Brampton. Thank you. And moving on, for 6.2B, National Respiratory Therapy Week, and I'll pass it on to Councillor Brar to read out the proclamation.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So National Respiratory Therapy Week. Whereas the last week of October is recognized as National Respiratory Therapy Week to celebrate the respiratory therapy profession and the dedication of respiratory therapists who are frontline workers in the health profession. The College of Respiratory Therapists of Ontario and the Respiratory Therapist Society of Ontario represent the interests of respiratory therapists in Ontario, advocates for them, and ensures that members meet professional and ethical standards. National Respiratory Therapy Week aims to educate the public about the role of respiratory therapists in the healthcare system and the important part they play in our public health system. Our healthcare system depended heavily on RTs during the COVID-19 pandemic to perform life-sustaining procedures, conducting tests, and providing vaccines as well. They continue to support these recovering from COVID-19, those living with long COVID-19, and other patients experiencing breathing difficulties or living with chronic diseases that affect the respiratory system. Therefore, I, Mayor Pratik Brown, on behalf of Brampton City Council, do hereby proclaim October 20 to 26, 2024 as National Respiratory Therapy Week in the City of Brampton.
Okay, great. We have two more announcements. Next is sponsored by myself. If you could come forward, Deepa Minu. I Am No Queen, a film based on the struggles of international students. I was introduced to them by my cousin Jinder, and I believe he also is in the film for a little bit. And I just wanted you to share to council about your movie. You are from Brampton, and you put us on the map, so thank you, and please go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, members of council, our mayor, and Mr. Singh. Thank you for inviting us to discuss about a movie called I Am No Queen. We are the producer. My wife, Meenu Basi, and I produced the film, and Shadav is from India. He is the director for the film.
Thank you so much for having us here. So there are multiple reasons why we have made this film. The primary reasons are like, back home in India, a lot of kids, they want to come and settle like in countries like Canada because they feel there are a lot of opportunities here. So what happens in that process, they fall prey to these bogus agents and these fake universities and finally they sell their lands, they take a lot of debts to the entire family and everybody goes in a deep trouble. And once they arrive here and there's not much for them here because they're not coming in the right way. So the idea of making this film is exactly to showcase what is the proper way to come to Canada and get the education and make the most out of the Canadian dream. So we request you all to come and have a look of our film, which is running in IFSA on 19th of October, 7:30 p.m. Yeah. So.
And the intent of this movie and the seed of this movie was just to take care of the people. This is for the people. It's a global project. And I personally run a wellness business for myself and recruiting women and employing women and young girls specifically. And in 2018, when I was hiring young girls, and that's when I came to find out that there were girls that had worked in factories for a month and not being paid. There were girls that were exploited, and some of the horrifying stories that came to the table. And the only way to help them was to bring awareness, and bring awareness not only in North America, but also in countries like third world countries like India and Asia, because these girls and kids come here with the hope for a better dream. So this movie is inspired by true events, covering harsh issues such as prostitution, drug abuse, sex trafficking is on the rise, especially among South Asian girls. And it's very hard as a South Asian woman to accept this because this is not readily or openly talked about in our communities. So to do this is a very brave and bold move that we've made. And it's getting a lot of attention, and we are going to be dubbing it in Punjabi, Hindi languages so that the parents are better educated. And sometimes it's better to be bloom where you've been planted instead of looking for better ways outside of your country. And we really hope this brings a nice loop as to some of the events taking place with the international students here, and it is inspired by them. And one of the biggest messages through this movie is also as Canadian citizens, we need to do our job as well. We've shown two types of characters. There's types of characters as a Canadian citizen that are violating these kids, and there's also a character that is trying to help these kids. So there's all types of good apple and bad apple. So we just hope that the message is clear and concise, and it goes to the masses through this project. Thank you.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. Your timing is a bit impeccable. What time and where is it showing on October the 19th?
Cineplex Orient, Courtney Park,
Yeah.
right on Highway 10 and 40 Courtney Park. And 6:30 is when the red carpet event is,
Yeah.
and then 7:30 is the movie.
Yeah.
And it's an hour and 20 minutes. So please come and give us your feedback and thoughts on this as well.
I'm looking at my calendar, I'll probably be there. And
Awesome.
part of the reason why it's important, we've been doing a lot of work related to international students here in Brampton, particularly the prostitution of international student girls. And on October the 23rd, we have a series of delegations, including a motion that's coming forward about this specific topic.
Oh, wow.
And so, you know, and working with Peel Police and the Anti-Human Sex Trafficking Unit at the region of Peel, our Community Safety Office here in Brampton, and our International Student Charter in Brampton. So I'm going to do my best to be there.
Please do come, yes.
Just so that I could also watch it in preparation for October 23rd, which is next week. So thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and you use the word Canadian dream and Canada. Especially the more you travel, you realize how lucky we are to be here. And I thought this was very relevant towards the discussions we're having, so that's why I wanted you to come share your announcement. And perhaps you could send an email out. Councillor Tour will probably meet you outside, and then you can he'll guide you. But you should send an email invite to everybody who can attend, and we're happy to support you in any way possible.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Moving on, 6.4 announcement, Brampton Plan wins Ontario Professional Planning Institute, OPPI Plan on Vision Award of Excellence. Commissioner Ganesh, unless, do you want to open up? Okay, Commissioner Ganesh, please come up to the podium. And it actually says that in the notes to tell you to come up to the podium and share your announcement.
Great, thanks very much, Deputy Mayor Singh and members of council. It's my pleasure today to be here before you and really introduce the all-star team that helped bring this award home for Team Brampton. As many of you know, over the past several years, through various delegations and presentations at planning and development committees, the team has been working on various elements of the Brampton Plan that council endorsed. And in September of this year, Brampton Plan, our new official plan, was presented the Plan Ontario Vision Award by the Ontario Professional Planning Institute. And, you know, given some of the recent discussions this council has had about how we want to plan and shape our city, while the planning department is the recipient of this award, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge my CLT colleagues, whether you're overseeing the enforcement of our bylaws, delivering transit, our parks, or supporting job creation, or overseeing the construction of new roads. All of us are very much aligned to city building because that's key to our mandate. So, you know, this award I share with my CLT colleagues and the department. With those few words, I'll pass it over to Councillor Pelleshi as Chair of Planning Committee.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Morning, everybody. As Chair of Planning and Development Committee, I'm thrilled with this announcement. As you may recall, it was November 1st of last year, Council adopted the city's new official plan, which was leading up to this was no easy task. It was difficult from the beginning, and it continued the hard work that our planners, stakeholders, had input. Ever-changing direction from the province was just kind of the throw-in, the dissolution, the downloading of planning. It was all like that perfect storm. Everything coming together. But despite it all, through the leadership of Hendrik, our Director of Integrated City Planning, along with his amazing staff, Team Brampton, rose to the occasion and delivered a plan that lays the groundwork for the next evolution. A plan that has been recognized by the Ontario Professional Planning Institute with the 2024 Plan Ontario Vision Award of Excellence. Not only will this plan support our future growth through an innovative city structure, it will also help to cut the red tape, and we've seen that as of recent announcements, groundbreakings last week, streamline approvals, attract investment, build more homes, and support job creation for years to come. With that, I'd like to congratulate the planning department, where you look at the planning department and on Mondays, some of those even late nights, we have such an amazing group of individuals that really care and really dedicated to planning our city. We have some amazing senior staff, the leadership that they have, and we have some young, innovative talent in the city of Brampton. And it's amazing to see that the growth management department and all the staff from the city who contributed to Brampton Plan. And at this time, I'd like to ask my council colleagues if we can call down and out the planners to come up for a photo op.
Okay, we will continue. We do not have any delegations. The government relations was put in consent. So moving on, 10.2.1, report regarding suspension and revocation of short-term rental licenses. Councillor Vicente.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. I would like to thank staff for preparing this report for us. I know that some of us have had issues in our wards with respect to short-term rentals. And when inquiring of staff, what do we do when we have a very serious problem with a short-term rental that causes issues within a neighborhood? And so understanding that there is this process that we can now, I guess for lack of a better term, activate when needed, I just wanted to ask that in addition to receiving this report, that this information and this process, the details of it, are sent by email to every short-term rental license holder, and that this information and the process and how a resident can engage the city in order to begin this process to be undertaken, that information be made available on the city websites in the section that details short-term rental bylaw, et cetera. And that's it. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, just keep an eye on the changes to see if they reflect what you said. And Councillor Santos.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. A quick question to staff. What is the process to deal with short-term rentals which are not licensed? How do we, I'm assuming they get, residents can complain, nuisance bylaws, et cetera. What is the process for those rentals that are not licensed? And then my other question is, and perhaps we can look more into detail during our workshop on this. My other question is in regards to properties that rent out their backyards and swimming pools. So not necessarily this is a short-term rental, not of the house, but people who are renting their backyards and swimming pools. Because I have a couple of situations in the ward I represent which we thought they were short-term rentals. They're not short-term rentals. They're renting out their backyard and swimming pools and having these really inappropriate parties, causing a whole bunch of issues in the neighborhood, where the folks who are renting the backyard are urinating all over the street and taking up a whole bunch of parking. It's very disruptive. So what would the process be? And certainly if we could add this as a discussion item when we talk about licensing in that workshop coming up.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Santos. The first question, how do we deal with residential licenses or properties that aren't licensed, is a bylaw enforcement matter, and bylaw officers, they do take complaints from neighbors. There's a number of, often the way they find out about them. And they also do blitzes in specific neighborhoods throughout the city to see what they can catch. And I will pass that over to Mr. Higgs to explore that a little bit further. And also the backyard rentals. It is against our zoning bylaw to have those backyard event rentals or pool rentals. And I'm wondering, Mr. Higgs, if you would be kind enough to explore both of those.
Absolutely. Through the chair. Councillor Santos, certainly any rental that you feel is unlicensed, we'd ask for constituents to put in a 311 complaint and it'll be investigated.
Okay.
Obviously, the number of dynamics that may be involved are numerous, so we'll figure out where it fits. If it is an Airbnb style short-term rental, we would gather the evidence to support that complaint, investigate it, and then either seek compliance or lay charges if that's not relevant. As far as the reference towards the renting out swimming pools, that's a different dynamic that is not covered under the short-term rental and is actually addressed through our zoning, and we would approach it that way.
Okay.
I don't know if the commissioner would want to add more to that, or?
Through the chair, no, I think the director covered it well, but certainly it's an opportune time for us to address these types of issues that are popping up through the gig economy, if you will, because we are undertaking a comprehensive update to our zoning bylaw. So certainly that is something that staff can take back as feedback and bring forward for council's consideration when we bring that bylaw.
That would be great. That would be great, because I've got a few of the residents complaining about these different issues and they don't really know what to do. And obviously I'm unclear myself. So wonderful. Thank you.
And sorry, just through the chair, one final, an ancillary issue is often covered under the nuisance bylaw, whether that's parking issues or loitering. So there is immediate action that we can undertake while the larger investigation is ongoing.
Thank you, Councillor Tour.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I know that we had the delegation from one of our residents that talked about this Airbnb rental on their street that was hosting weddings every single weekend. And I've heard stories like that about other homes in neighborhoods. A one-off party on a street is acceptable by neighbors as just being neighborly, but when you have a house that's doing a party every single weekend, it is just so hard to deal with. I haven't gone into too many details in the report, but maybe if, Rob, you can just tell us how do we deal with a home like that beyond enforcement? They've made calls to 911, enforcement has come, assuming they've issued tickets, but it's an ongoing issue. And I guess the homeowner thinks a ticket every 2-3 weeks is not going to be a problem if they're getting good rental income. So how do we deal with that? Like, is there a way we communicate with the platform and say, we don't want to see this house listed on your platform anymore because it's violating our bylaws?
Through the chair, certainly, again, we would have escalated enforcement steps that, start off with a penalty notice, but then it can increase to be a Part 3 summons, which has significant penalties associated to it. And this is always the importance of engaging 311. If there is a documented history that the clerk can then draw upon, at that point the license can be reviewed and it can be determined whether or not it be revoked as far as, and that's in our realm. You did mention about communicating with the platform. We can absolutely communicate with the platform and highlight their liability within it. And those are steps that we take when you're getting into a scenario like what you're describing that's an ongoing, consistent problem.
Yeah, I think that's very important to communicate that with a platform like Airbnb, which is great to have in the city, but then once it starts causing us problems, I think they need to know that it is causing us problems, and they could risk not being in our city anymore if they don't address those problems from their end. Like, we do the enforcement on our end. A platform like Airbnb should do that on their end too, where they contact the host and say, we're getting complaints from your municipality about your property, and if you don't deal with them in time, you will be removed from our platform. I think that needs to be something they do as well. That's the only thing that can squeeze out somebody that's causing this issue. So if we can look into doing that, I think that's what I'd like to see.
Through the chair, we'll make sure that those steps are also articulated on the webpage, just so that constituents are aware of the larger efforts.
Thank you, Councillor Pleshy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're just wondering, two items. One, we had a house that was constantly being rented out a number of years ago. Shots were fired, police were called, bylaw was always going and investigating. What we found out early on, though, was it wasn't on any platform. It wasn't on any Airbnb or anything like that. Yet it continued to be rented out almost every weekend. Now that rental it kind of died down and it's coming back now. How do we handle a case like that where was constantly a nuisance before, charges were laid, court dates are set, but yet it's coming back now to start all over again?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Palashi. I think the first place to start is with those formal complaints coming in and being logged on 311. That gives me that even if they're not advertised anywhere, if they have a municipal license, we can deal with it through this process in the report. But tracking through 311 also allows bylaw to easily keep track of the complaints. And when it starts escalating, again, the set fines are sometimes the cost of doing business, and people don't mind so much. But the Part 3 process allows considerable large fines, and it is a court process. It's not just pay a ticket. So again, I'll pass this over to Mr. Higgs if you want to elaborate on that or add to it.
So through the chair, Councillor, you've described a property that has an extensive history. We would not start at the bottom of the spectrum with that property. That history exists and is documented both in Peel Regional Police databases and City of Brampton databases. We would start at the appropriate enforcement level. Now that I recognize the term that it's ramping back up, we would say that it's continuing, and we would not start back at the bottom.
Okay, doesn't answer my question. I
Sorry.
assume we wouldn't start at the bottom.
Okay,
How do
sorry.
we stop this from being rented out? How do we make sure that no more shots are fired? How do we make sure that the neighborhood is safe? How do we make sure that this is no longer being rented out?
So the mechanisms, through the chair, the mechanisms that we have at place are increasing penalty notice or Part 3 summons and making it a financial disincentive to doing that.
That's our only ability, right?
That's to my knowledge. Sorry, through the chair, sorry. Working in partnership with Peel Regional Police as well. They may have other avenues. We would certainly keep them in the loop.
Okay. The clerk mentioned blitzes. Can you walk us through a blitz when, who determines to blitz an area, what area? Why do we do blitzes? And how often do we do them?
So that's, through the chair, that's certainly part of our operational review report that will be coming up in the next few weeks. We are using intelligence-led enforcement, and we're drawing upon the databases of where are we getting the complaints, what are the complaints, and then addressing those. Additional residential units are a good example where the ARU may be the root, but what neighbors are really upset about is the parking and the refuse issues. And those are tangible behaviors that we can immediately address. So we will organize a blitz to do that area where there is a cluster. At this point in our review, we've been doing them ad hoc when we see the need. We are scheduling them out for all of 2025 so that it will be planned and intentional, and councillors will have the foresight to know what is going on in their wards.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pleshy. I have a motion as amended, moved by Councillor Vicente, seconded by Councillor Santos. All in favor? Motion carries. Moving on to the next held item was held by myself because it's a verbal update regarding the Heart Lake Turtle Troopers delegation and Heart Lake Road ecology measures. And so, thank you. You can begin the presentation.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of council. My name is Carly Ciancino. I am the supervisor of wetlands and environmental projects at the City of Brampton. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on the city's road ecology efforts along Heart Lake Road. So just a bit of background, Heart Lake Road runs through one of Brampton's most ecological and culturally significant areas in Brampton, including the Heart Lake Conservation Area and the Heart Lake Provincially Significant Wetland Complex. This area provides critical habitat for species at risk like snapping turtles, and unfortunately this important corridor has been a long-term hotspot for wildlife mortality due to vehicle collisions. Since 2010, the city has partnered with the TRCA and community groups to document significant wildlife mortality. And in 2016, city staff were directed to develop a short and medium-term mitigation strategy. In 2016, the city and its partners implemented 3 eco passages under Heart Lake Road, which are tunnels for wildlife. We've also implemented pavement markings and warning signs. There were a few turtle nesting beaches on the side of the road to provide safe breeding areas, and temporary wildlife fencing was implemented on hotspot locations for 1.5 kilometers up the road. As part of the strategy, staff were also recommended to develop a function and design review of Heart Lake Road, which was developed by the transportation planning staff in 2019. This recommended permanent wildlife fencing along the road. Between 2017 and 2022, limited road ecology measures were implemented due to a lack of dedicated program and coupled with the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2023, conversations have started again with community groups, including the Heart Lake Turtle Troopers, political officials, including councillors, the TRCA, and city staff. Concerns were reignited due to an increase of traffic volume, speeding, littering, and the deterioration of this temporary fencing. Over the past 2 years, city staff have installed 2 seasonal in-road traffic calming barriers, designated the road as a community safety zone, and we have recently purchased 150 meters of temporary fencing to fix any gaps in the next interim year. The city has also recently confirmed cash in lieu contributions from local developers, and we've confirmed an amount of $310,000, and this goes towards wildlife mitigation measures along the road. To address these ongoing challenges that we have been seeing since 2010, and to ensure the long-term effectiveness of our road ecology efforts. With new development in the area, city staff have identified several recommendations for council's consideration. We first recommend establishing a permanent road ecology program for Heart Lake Road to address wildlife mortality and protect critical habitats. Similar initiatives exist in Hamilton, Oakville, and Burlington, and this program would provide long-term, coordinated approach to enhancing current mitigation measures, exploring innovative solutions, and addressing other areas in Brampton that are in need of road ecology efforts. Components of this program will include developing a budget to utilize that $310,000 in developer contributions, securing long-term funding for road ecology infrastructure and wildlife monitoring through grant opportunities, conducting a geotechnical review to assess permanent wildlife fencing options, and this will guide a pilot to test more durable fencing in critical areas, establishing a working group comprised of city staff, TRCA, and community groups like the Turtle Troopers, and launching an annual campaign to raise public awareness about wildlife conservation and especially safe driving along Heart Lake Road. We can also implement a monitoring program to track wildlife movements, mortality rates, and the effectiveness of the current measures that were developed in 2016. This would be a data-driven approach that would support future eco-passage placement if needed, future fencing, and future wildlife protection. To maintain our current baseline levels of service and to develop and implement the proposed road ecology program, we recommend adding one environmental project specialist at the cost of $124,169 to the organization. This position would be responsible for overseeing all citywide, including Heart Lake Road, ecology efforts, coordinating any working groups, monitoring programs, and leading community outreach. Staff are currently developing the 2025 operating budget, and it has been determined that this position will exceed departmental targets. Staff can include this recommendation as an above-target request for the mayor's consideration. These recommended actions will help maintain the ecological integrity of Heart Lake Road and ensure that this corridor remains safe for visitors, wildlife, and citizens. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Pleshy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Carly. That's those recommendations are above and beyond what I expected. I think we're good with every single one of them. The position, I think, of course, has to go to the mayor's budget, but we're I think fully supportive of that new position, and we'll chirp in his ear a little bit, see what we can get. So I'm happy to. I think we're good to move those recommendations. Thank you so much. You've always been amazing at anything to do with Heart Lake, everything that's going on with whether it be Loafers Lake, Ken Park, or even Heart Lake Road. So thank you team, very much from my colleague and I. So we're happy to support that and move that, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
You'll have that discussion in budget, correct? Because it's a verbal
one
update.
position, but everything else that you mentioned, we're moving those.
Okay.
300 coming out of parks.
Yeah. So there's no report. This is a verbal update.
Okay.
So I think staff is clerk's office.
So the clerk's office takes minutes. Everything that she mentioned in those minutes with that $300,000+ can be added to a motion, and we're happy to move that.
Yeah,
Carly, if you can provide that to the clerk's office, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
You have Councillor Barr on the board.
Okay. Do you have something? Yeah. Sorry, before I.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Carly, for that amazing update. I know we've been having these meetings during the year regarding the fencing or just with community groups and making sure we can ensure that Heart Lake Road is safe for the turtles and the wildlife there. But really seeing that, you've taken initiative to take on this with the whole team. We're very, very proud with all the recommendations, and we are happy to support that. Again, great work. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, through you, Chair.
Yep.
Through the chair.
Commissioner Ganesh.
First of all, thank you very much, Carly. It was a great verbal update. The recommendations were also articulated in a briefing note sent to council prior to today's meeting. So with the indulgence of council, what we could do is just take the recommendations from the briefing note, pass them to the clerk so that they can be displayed on the screen.
So maybe, stand it down, and then that's what we're going to suggest. So we'll stand this item down and deal with it when we come back from in camera. Okay. I don't need a motion to stand it down. No. Okay. Perfect. I think we have 10.4 verbal update. Yeah, okay. So I'll still have a motion moved by Councillor Pleshy, seconded by Councillor Brar, to receive the verbal update. All in favor? Motion carries. 10.4.3 is a staff report regarding city comments on ERO 0199210, amendment to Ontario Regulation 299/19 additional residential units under the Planning Act. This was held by Councillor Santos.
Yep. Thanks through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much to staff for putting together that report and the report on in terms of the possible implications to Brampton and a lot of the work that we're doing with respect to the residential rental licensing program. You're standing there, so I don't know if you're going to be presenting anything. Are you presenting anything? You are? Yes. Okay, awesome. Well, I'll let you present, and then I'll add my stuff after then.
Sorry, my apologies. Okay. Hello, Council. Thank you for letting me speak today about ERO 0199210, proposed amendments to the Ontario Regulation 299-19, additional residential units under the Planning Act. So the proposed amendments seek to relax zoning regulations in 5 key areas, in particular angular plane requirements, maximum lot coverage, floor space index, FSI requirements, minimum lot areas for lots containing ARUs, and building distance separations from ARUs to principal buildings. So some of the key changes, kind of as I summarized, is the overriding of angular plane requirements. And for the implications of the city, we foresee greater privacy issues with two-story ARUs, in particular for those above garages, daylight and visibility concerns for residents adjacent to ARUs. And staff wants clarification from the province whether these proposed changes would override adjacent zoning provisions that we have, such as height requirements and tiered setbacks that we are currently proposing in the draft amendment for the zoning bylaw. The maximum lot coverage implications, it would allow for 45% maximum lot coverage for lots containing ARUs. The implications to the city is that a lot of our current zonings, including the sensitive mature neighborhoods, only have a 30% lot coverage. Typically, the lot coverages range between 25 to 35% in a lot of R1 zones, a lot of the low-density residential. So the key impact to the city would be many of those neighborhoods would lose their character. A lot of these areas are very sensitive as well, being the mature neighborhoods, being areas that people take a lot of pride in. And the additional lot coverage would put a strain on the stormwater system and other municipal services and have a lot of other downstream effects, with refuse collection and things of that nature. The floor space index requirements would be, so there would be no floor space index requirements for ARUs with this proposed change from the province. And the city wants clarification on that, whether that would also affect certain GFA requirements, close floor area requirements as well. And that would also, create larger ARUs that could lead to more enforcement issues, regarding enforcement, and seeks to would be able to undermine our RRL program, allowing larger units where more residents and more tenants could potentially be housed. The graphics we have up there showing sort of the lot coverage of some of the areas. A major concern would be that in a lot of our lots, 45% lot coverage wouldn't be feasible. It would take away from all the amenity space in the rear yard for both the residents and for both the primary unit and the ARU residents, and then just causing daylight concerns to the adjacent lots as well. Those are our main concerns with it, with the proposed amendments. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Santos?
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. Thanks very much again for this summary, it's a bit concerning because it is a little bit contrary, not a little bit, but it is certainly contrary to some of the efforts that we're doing to deal with the situation regarding ARUs and the rental of ARUs, particularly in mature neighborhoods. I am wondering, like, just looking at that, and Commissioner Ganesh and I spoke about this offline before, and he used the analogy of sardines inside a sardine can. You're like literally trying to squeeze people into a small lot. And I imagine there might be implications to stormwater issues and our stormwater charges that we have. Would that be correct? Because we're taking away permeable.
Yeah, through the chair, one of the elements that Connor and the team identified in the report is the increased impervious surface area that would come about with ARUs. And we're seeing that more and more with driveway widenings, for instance. And in fact, yesterday I had an opportunity to brief the chair and vice chair of planning committee on a forthcoming report on driveway width standards for next week's planning committee. And there was some discussion about, sort of educating homeowners about using permeable services to mitigate the impacts on our stormwater infrastructure, which these 100-year storms seem to happen every year now, and continue to stress and test our infrastructure.
Thank you. So stormwater is definitely an issue. And then if you go back to that slide with the examples of the sardines being squished in to the property lots, in looking at it, I'm just wondering about, no. Yeah, the pictures, yeah, that semi-detached picture is perfectly fine, yeah. I've got a lot of these in Ward 1 and 5, these types of semi-detached buildings that end up, some of them are back splits, they end up getting converted into 3 different ARUs, and now a lot of these back splits or side splits also have big backyards, so that they could squeeze more in, looks like in the backyard as well. I don't know, how would fire get access to these units in the back?
Through the chair, that would certainly be a challenge as you imagine fighting a fire and trying to progress, with a hose line walking back in winter, even in summer, and just the increased size, as you can imagine, if they do burn, the chance to spread to the adjacent properties increases. And
yeah, because the setback is even more narrow from the house and even the neighboring homes, right?
Correct, yeah, so it certainly would, as they get bigger and take up more space, there's more fire load, so which then potentially has more fire spread, which gets into the adjacent properties too.
So I think when we communicate, because I believe Connor and Steve were going to be providing comment to the province, I think we should include things like the stormwater issue, as well as the fire safety concerns that we have, but also the other consequences related to services such as increased fire service, increased transit, increased issues related to property standards and bylaw enforcement. All of the things that we are trying to mitigate through the RRL program are just going to get worse if this legislation goes through. And I have some direction to staff to include very specific communication in the correspondence to the province. And Madam Clerk, if you don't mind just bringing that up, because our Commissioner of Planning helped to draft it. Because unfortunately, the burden of all of these extra services, if the province doesn't give us the additional tools or additional financial support to deal with the added increase in services, enforcement, stormwater issues, you name it, are going to be on the burden of the property taxpayers, who are already constrained, as we know, dealing with the additional rental units that are being rented out that we are currently trying to catch up with through the RRL program. So if I could just provide this as direction that we include this language in the correspondence going back to the province, including the issues related to fire safety, as well as the stormwater issues as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for clarification, you're asking for more funding, it sounds like, correct? Okay, all right, cool. Any other, oh, the screen turned off. Apologies, Councillor Medeiros?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I agree with all the sentiments of Councillor Santos, and some of my questions were around first responders in terms of what their sort of response have been, understanding that we only capture part of it, and police and so on will provide their own. Through you, Mr. Chair, the other aspect, and again, Councillor Santos touched upon, is all the sort of increase on our services in terms of waste collection, in terms of, you know, you're adding more density, which, you know, I think essentially we're not opposed, but then there's all this, we're just magnifying the issue. And there's no, for example, I guess discussion, and as part of, I guess, the feedback, which I think it captures it, but there should be some financial tools. If you're going to force us to do this, there should be some financial tools that come with it for us to be able to provide adequate services, because this is not sustainable going forward. And I think you've captured it in some of the recommendations in the report, but I think that has to be stressed. And I guess another question I would have, other jurisdictions, like it seems, you know, Brampton's a leader in sort of dealing with this issue, and I understand it's more acute maybe in our community, but I know in Mississauga and so on, they're starting to sort of wrap their heads around, you know, they've seen what we've done, and, you know, and I sometimes find Mississauga, you know, I just talk about being a neighbor jurisdiction, you know, they have very similar issues. They haven't recognized it as such, because, you know, I know in certain neighborhoods and certain things that they're dealing with, you know, students and, you know, 10 to 12 students, they have those horror stories and so on. But because they don't have a licensing program, or they haven't captured it as much as we have, is the province doing this? Are other jurisdictions okay? Do you have any sort of sense from your colleagues around different municipalities what they're saying?
Through the chair, through to you, Councillor Medeiros, I have reached out to my colleagues at Caledon and Mississauga. I have yet to see their staff comments on this proposed legislation. I guess I would say two things. One, again, Brampton has certainly stepped up and been proactive by introducing the RRL program. But if we remove the RRL part of the equation and sort of some of the things that come with that narrative, international students and whatnot, the legislation as proposed is a very homogeneous, universal approach that the province is taking. And to that degree, what doesn't work in Brampton may work in some parts of Caledon or Toronto or Mississauga for that matter. One of the things that we're suggesting in this report, that if the province were to go through with this legislation as proposed, it be made as an optional tool for municipalities to use at their means, because local councillors and residents know their communities best.
Yeah, that's an impactful statement. So thank you for the work, and really fully supportive of the recommendations, and thank you for the amendment, Councillor Santos. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Tour.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. You know, my colleagues are asking very important questions. I agree with them as well. I think these are the questions we should be asking the province when we were signing that pledge too. We accepted to be part of the housing pledge on creating more housing, but of course we don't see any further investment in our city when it comes to our transit systems or hospital, any of our services. That's where the problem is going to lie with when we add more units to our city. Just talking just more specifically to the report, Connor, I see you wrote the report here. So there's a question to you or anybody that's on the report. I know at multiple points in the report you mentioned the RRL pilot program, but you call it successful. Is that an opinion or a fact? Because I've had that discussion here before, and the last time I talked about it, staff told me that's not the language used by City of Brampton. That was a language maybe used politically by members of council, but not by staff. But now in this report, I just have a problem seeing that. So why is that language in there?
Yeah, through the chair, maybe I'll take the first part of answering that question. The report does mention some of the accolades that Brampton has received, in specific through the award for our Brampton Plan, which does mention this council's support for things like ARUs and RRLs. I don't think it was the intention of staff or the report to have a narrative to say with concrete evidence that the RRL program has demonstrated success. I do recall the question you posed to enforcement staff in the past, and I believe, I don't want to speak for council, what you were looking for was a key performance indicator to suggest or to see if imposing the RRL program has started to change behavior of those who signed up for licenses versus those who would need a license in the first place. So I think it's safe to say that through reports like this and further reporting on RRL, we'll be able to have KPIs to track that.
Yeah, and I'm happy to see that in the future because we're only 6 months into a two-year pilot program. I don't want to prematurely call it a success or a failure of the program. So if we can change that language in this report as well, and whatever communication we send out, we can talk about the RRL program. We can mention that in the report, no problems with that, but take out the word successful RRL pilot program.
And if I could, through the deputy, through to you, Councillor Torre, that's why in answering the question from Councillor Medeiros, this report is sprinkled with elements of RRL because that is one of the pilot programs we have to sort of test ARUs. But I think it's important we remove that along with the narrative of like, the student overcrowding and whatnot as it relates to this particular piece of legislation, because this legislation really speaks to zoning performance standards for ARUs, not necessarily RRLs.
And that's my exact understanding too. So if we can not have that language part of this, I'm happy to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brar, and then we have Councillor Keenan online as well. Councillor Brar.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say thank you for bringing that report. Councillor Pleshy and I will be visiting a couple of sites this week regarding these concerns. When you really look at, I want to just go back to the slide where you're showing the suites. Yes. So when you even look at these suites, some of the proximity of how close they are to other neighbors, and I think some of the resident concerns that we're feeling are privacy, safety, and you know, whether it's legal or not, there's still going to be people occupying in that standalone building. And I think it's, you know, people are feeling very overwhelmed. Already you've seen it through COVID with just anxiety and stress. And I think people are wanting to have their own space, you know, maybe going to the backyard, having that cup of tea without having to look over and seeing other people staring back at you, not on purpose, but it's just, that's how close they are. And I think it's important to know that how can we change and make these standards appropriate that fits for all residents. And I think the other concern was, I guess there's no parking required for these garden suites. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair. There is a parking requirement for the first ARU. The second unit, so 3 units total would require 2 parking spaces.
But not the third?
But not the third, no.
Yeah, and I think that's where it comes to when we look at parking issues. So again, whether it's legal or not, they're still gonna, people are gonna bring their cars. If they have the cars, they're gonna still bring them, and there's gonna be parking issues on the streets. So I think that's another issue, but also garbage. Are we gonna have extra garbage bins for these additional ARUs? Because just if you think about having one household, they do have those garbage bins, but then you wanna make sure if you're having additional ARUs, you have more garbage bins to actually to accommodate that. But thank you for your report. Just want to address those are some of the issues that we're facing right now. And I think we want to make sure that we're placing them properly, appropriately in places where they're far from other resident areas. So if you do have a bigger backyard, but you know, I think a lot of residents are confirming that, you know, it was okay if it was in an area where they had a very large backyard, maybe where they have like acres of land and they had their ARU unit and it wouldn't be disturbing other neighbors, but where it's very enclosed, where you can look at just at this picture right here, where they're very close and tightly together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keenan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And through you, I just, my colleagues have pretty much covered everything that I was going to comment on or say. I really think that the province is fixated on a number to hit their housing market and not the type of housing we're building. I agree with everything being said here today. I'm happy to support this. But yeah, I'll leave it there for now because everyone's covered it, so thank you.
Okay, we have a motion moved by Councillor Santos and seconded by Councillor Keenan as amended. All in favor? Motion carries. Moving on now, we have a public question period. Do any members of the public have any question, anything online?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, I see no questions online.
Okay. We are now at the portion of the meeting dealing with adoption of city bylaws to give effect to council decisions made at this meeting. I have a motion moved by Councillor Tour and seconded by Councillor Pleshy to approve bylaws 154-2024 and to 163-2024 inclusive. All in favor? Motion carries. Our next item of business is item 19, closed session business. I have a motion moved by Councillor Santos and seconded by Councillor Power to move into close to deal with the following items: 19.1, 19.2, dealing with 19.4 and 19.5. All in favor? Motion carries. We will enter closed at 11 o'clock. Thank you.
Testing audio, check 1, 2, 3.
Okay, we're gonna get started. I will have the clerk report out from closed session. In the continuing interest of transparency, in the continuing interest of transparency and open government, the clerk will report a public session, any outcomes from today's closed session business.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, in closed session, items 19.1, 19.2, and 19.3, all closed session minutes, were approved on consent and not considered in closed session. Item 19.4, the report purchasing card audit supplemental information was considered in closed session and direction was given to staff. And the last item in closed, the report, an update on derelict properties in Ward 1, was considered in closed session and direction was given to staff.
Okay, thank you. And I will move on to reopen an item that was also stood down, which is 10.4.2. So do I have 2/3 to open it? That carries. So now we are open on the verbal update at 10.4.2. And I believe there is a motion from Councillor Pleshy. And we'll have it seconded by Councillor Brar. All in favor? Motion.
Referral is part of that, or is it separate? Referring the 100 and some odd thousand to the mayor's budget with somebody else, it's all part of that, right? Yep.
Yeah, okay. Moved by Councillor Pleshy, seconded by Councillor Brar. All in favor? Motion carries. Moving on to confirming bylaw. Our next item is item 20, the confirming bylaw. I have a motion moved by Councillor Maderos, is seconded by Councillor Power to approve the confirming bylaw to confirm the proceedings and decisions from this meeting. All in favor? Motion carries. Our last item of business is item 21, adjournment. Council next scheduled to meet Wednesday, October 30th, 2024 at 9:30 a.m. I have a motion moved by Councillor Power and seconded by Councillor Power to adjourn today's meeting. All in favor? Motion carries. It's Councillor Tour. Sorry. Okay, thank you.